Ayo, back at it again with another video. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. So this video is about the proxy network of Iran. So the past week and a half, there's been conflict in Israel. Got Hamas launched an attack on, I think it was the 7th of October, so about a week and a half ago. Launched a ton of missiles at Ashkelon, at Ashdod, at Tel Aviv, a handful of missiles towards Surat and Netivot. So there's been, a lot of missiles launched from Hamas in the Gaza Strip directed towards, this part of Israel, towards Ashkelon, towards Ashdod, towards Tel Aviv, and towards settlements in this part of the Israel. So, for most of my talking about politics here on the channel, I've done my best to stay away from the Israel-Palestine conflict, mainly because it's just very complicated. There's a ton of opinions. There's pro-Israeli opinions, and then there's pro-Palestinian opinions, and then there's some opinions. Is there a possibility for a two-state solution to work? Or, it maybe not. So I've done my best to more or less stay away from this topic because it's very complex, very complicated, very sensitive. So I've done my best to stay away from this topic. However, I will be talking mostly about the Iranian proxy network. So Hamas down here in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. That's the two big ones, but there are militias that Iran has ties to in Syria. They've propped up Bashar al-Assad in the Syrian civil war. Militias that the Iranians have influence over in Iraq as well. The Iranians have been supplying weapons to the Houthis in Yemen. So a lot has happened in the past week and a half. The situation is, changing minute by minute. So there's been a lot that's happened in the past week and a half. So it's kind of hard to keep up with everything that's happened. But most of the Iranian proxy networks are in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, because they've mostly tried to reach the Mediterranean Sea with their influence. Militias in Iraq, militias in Syria, you got Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So Iran has really garnered a lot of influence among different groups, especially in this area of the world. Again, they also have proxies in Yemen and interests elsewhere in the region. So the ones that I'm going to focus on predominantly are Hamas and Hezbollah. So a little bit about Hezbollah. So they are a group in southern Lebanon. They have tons of missiles, tens of thousands. I think they have roughly 125,000. According to this, they have about 130, maybe as high as 150,000. There's not a whole lot that I know of for sure, but basically they have roughly 125,000 missiles. Land attack, you have smaller rockets. You have the Fateh 110, the Scud missile. You have anti-tank missiles. You have anti-ship missiles, anti-air missiles. So that could potentially pose serious challenges, especially if you put ships in the Eastern Mediterranean, Israeli ships or U.S. carriers in the region. They have anti-ship missiles, so that could potentially pose an issue. But most of their missiles have, ranges of 250 kilometers. The 110 has 250-kilometer range. So if they're launched from southern Lebanon, that has Haifa, that has Tel Aviv, that has Dimona in range. So Hamas has mostly been attacking Ashkelon, Ashdod, Tel Aviv, settlements in this area. If Hezbollah were to get involved, then that would pose a challenge to the Israelis, because that would mean places like Nazareth, Haifa, Netanya, Tel Aviv would be threatened. And if Hezbollah sends their long-range rockets, they could even hit Dimona, which is the place where the Israelis have their nuclear reactor. Let's kind of shift views. Somewhere around in here. Yeah, that's a place that could potentially be. Yeah, the Negev Nuclear Research Center over here. So that's could potentially be in range if they have rockets that have 250-kilometer range, distance from southern Lebanon down towards Dimona. That's well within 250 kilometers. That's a 234 kilometer. So that could pose a challenge to Israel. So if Hezbollah gets involved, then places like Nazareth and Haifa are, directly threatened, but also places like Tel Aviv and Ashdod and Ashkelon and Beersheba, and especially Dimona and, the Negev. So we're going to check that one more time. Yeah, that's well within 250 kilometers. So that could pose a challenge to the Israelis. And most of their airfields would also be in range, because you have airfields in the north. I'm sure you got airfields in this, center here between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. You get also some airfields, I'm sure, in this area of the country. So airfields and, strategic places for your military could be, under threat, especially if they start launching Scud missiles that have 300-kilometer range. Then that would put most of Israel, with the exception of the very bottom southern part, being in range. So if Hezbollah gets involved, then that would be a serious problem for the Israelis. And that's part of the reason why I don't think they've gone into the Gaza Strip at the moment, because I think they're hesitating, because if they get involved in urban conflict down here in the Gaza Strip, then they fear that there could be Hezbollah conflict breaking out in the north. So there's a lot of things that could happen, but Hezbollah definitely poses a considerable threat to Israel with all these missiles and rockets at their disposal. So there's a lot of proxies that could get involved. The two big ones are Hamas and Hezbollah, but there's also militias in Syria and Iraq as well. So that is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Deuces.